All right. Hello, everyone. We are continuing in Memoriam, and we're on page 186, and it's number 27. We're following Tennyson as he goes through the grieving process. And number 27 is one of the high points of the beginning of the poem. Now, even though Tennyson wrote these poems probably for a period of 8, 9, 10 years, when he came to the point of putting them together, the individual pieces for publication, he decided to give the epic a 3-year arc. So he's kind of condensing what he went through over a 3-year period, and literally he marks those periods by the first Christmas after Hallam died, the second Christmas, and the third Christmas. And of course, why does it make sense that you would build your epic about grieving around holidays? When you're grieving, what can you tell me about holidays when you're grieving? That the easiest time? It's actually the hardest time. Why? Good, then you really recognize the absence. But if you're an American, particularly at Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, you feel the absence. So it's a structure that works, but it's also organic because it's exactly right. That's the most difficult time. So number 27 is the end of the first movement. There's really 4 movements, just like a symphony. It's the end of the first movement because you'll see in a moment, number 28 is the first Christmas poem after the death of Hallam. So we're going to end the first movement on a high point. And he says, number 27, I envy not in any moods the captive void of noble rage, the linnet born within the cage that never knew the summer woods. I envy not the beast that takes his license in the field of time, unfettered by the sense of crime, to whom a conscience never wakes, nor what may count itself as blessed, the heart that never plighted troth, but stagnates in the weeds of sloth, nor any want-begotten rest. Right. He's saying, these are the people I don't envy. And he's going to tell us something else, but this is, I used to want to be like this, but now I don't. I don't envy the captive void of noble rage. Okay, now we're talking about prisoners, but we're not talking here about like a murderer that's put in prison. We're talking about political prisoners or prisoners of war. And what's the first duty of a prisoner of war? Have you ever heard that? It's to try to escape, they would say. So what he means is, I don't envy the prisoner who just gives up and just lives in his place and doesn't try to escape and try to do anything. I also don't envy the bird, the linnet, born within the cage that never knew the summer woods. Right? A girl might be tempted to just marry a rich guy, even if she doesn't necessarily love him. Why would it be nice to marry a rich guy? Then you have what? Good. Got all the freedom, everything's there, right? Now, in some ways, have you ever heard of the bird in the what cage? Heard this phrase, the bird in the gilded cage? Remember that gilded as in with gold? So it's beautiful, but still it's sort of a prison. You don't want to be there. He doesn't want to be that. He would have liked to. Let me just rest and relax and stay here and not try to move on. But now he's getting stronger. He said, no, I don't want to be like that, right? I don't want to be a beast. Now, why would you want to be an animal? Because an animal doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't have to make moral, ethical decisions. It doesn't know about grief. But no, I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want to just give way to revelry and be like an animal, right? Nor do I want to be this. The heart that never plighted troth. Now that's an old-fashioned word, but does the word troth sound like a word you know? If you put B-E in front of it? What does that mean? Good, promise. So like you're engaged, you're betrothed. We don't use it as much, but that's what it means. So I don't envy the heart that never plighted troth, but stagnates in the weeds of sloth. So why would somebody never want to get betrothed? Because if you're never betrothed, then what cannot happen to you? You get married and you don't have the possibility of being hurt. Right? So in other words, anytime you put yourself out there, right? Just anybody that's dating, you never want to be the first person to say "I love you" to your boyfriend or girlfriend, because what might happen when you say that? We are like, that's what you thought. Yeah, no, you know what? They're going to laugh at you, right? So he says, but he used to. Now I don't envy that person. I'm willing to take it. I don't want to be the one that plays it safe all the time. And then that famous last stanza that we've all heard before. I hold it true whate'er befall. I feel it when I sorrow most. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. You've heard that phrase before, haven't you? But you probably thought that famous phrase was referring to what? To what kind of love? Didn't you sort of take for granted it was like a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend? I always did. But here, what kind of love is he talking about? The love between friends, okay? So it doesn't, this is, I always thought it was romantic, like lovers. But here it's about friends. Now, again, it's easy to say 'tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Until you have loved and lost, and then it's not so easy. Maybe it would have been better if I never did this. So, if one of us just said that glibly, wouldn't mean much. But this person has loved and has lost, and he's still saying, I wouldn't change anything. Right? Even though great sorrow comes with this. Right? Because if we never want to be hurt, that's easy. Just never give your confidence to anybody, never trust anybody, never give your heart to anybody. But is that a way to live? This is the way we're living right now, wearing masks, social distancing, right? So, again, this is a triumphant thing for Tennyson to say. It would have been easy for him to say, better I never met Hallam and didn't have to go through this pain. But, without the pain, there's not the love, there's not the joy. So, hey, one more person, yay! And it's Abigail. Okay. Oh, that's right, you did tell me. Abigail at a meeting, good. Good, we need you, we're down to 2. Can you imagine? We just finished looking at number 27. I was telling him that I've got a free preview of HBO, and they're showing the new Emma. Have you seen the new Emma? Yeah, I don't know if we'll see. Then we're watching this weekend, see if it's any good. Oh, great stuff! Wow. Okay. There we go. That's good. She's thinking about law school? Yeah, because traditionally you major in English or history as a law, because law school is all, basically what we would call, what's the word, reading comprehension, reading and learning and understanding, and, so, oh, good. So if we'll get her, maybe we'll get her in Narnia in the fall. There's 2 people that want to take my Lord of the Rings, but they're freshmen. What's that? It's like they can't do. You have to be a senior. Although I said, maybe if you want to audit or something, you can. Maybe, but hopefully I'll teach it again before. But you see if you know their names. It was Renee Peters, and I guess she's got a buddy she always hangs out with. Who's the other one? Sarah Molina. I haven't met them yet, but they were the ones that asked. I'm like, you have to be a senior, but we'll get you in Narnia maybe. No, these are people. Okay, that's the people I got to get in class. Okay. Oh wow. Oh, that is committed. That's commitment. That's nerddom at a high level. I like that. But it's not nerddom if you're playing the violin. That's classy. So we were just looking at number 27 on page 186. And we're saying he reaches a high point. He says, I don't want to live a sheltered life. I don't want to be a bird in a gilded cage, even though, and we ended with that famous line of 186, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." And we said, I'm sure you'd heard that verse before? What did you think it referred to? What kind of love did you think it referred to? Yeah, romantic. Like I said, it's friendship love here, which is really neat. And we're just as you walked in, we're saying it's easy to glibly say "'tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all," until you've loved and lost. And so this is a real triumph for Tennyson to say it. But then, and we were just saying that we just ended the first section, because the first section ends and the second section, the second movement, begins with the first Christmas after Hallam's death. And we said, when you're grieving, Christmas is the hardest time because you feel the absence. And so, in number 28, we're not going to go crashing down per se, but number 28 is going to be less strong and resolute as number 27. But think about it. Is this the way the grieving process works? Like this, like a line? Is that how the grieving process works? It kind of works like this, right? And then sometimes for people, when you're grieving, you think you're doing well, and then you crash, but then you come up, and each time you go down, you get a little higher. But nothing's completely linear like that. You go up and down. And so even though 27 is triumphant, 28 is a little bit more despairing. So he starts, the time draws near the birth of Christ. We're just about time for Christmas. The moon is hid, the night is still. The Christmas bells from hill to hill answer each other in the mist. We used to call that the poor man's music, right? Before, record players and radio, that was your music, was the bells. Four voices of four hamlets round, from far and near on mead and moor, swell out and fail, as if a door were shut between me and the sound. Again, feeling the grief cut off. Each voice four changes on the wind that now dilate and now decrease. Peace and goodwill, goodwill and peace. Peace and goodwill to all mankind. That's beautiful. What are the famous chimes in a grandfather's clock? What does it sound like? When you do it, you have to have good pitch to do it. What does it sound like? Da da dee da. Da da dee da. You ever heard that? Da da dee da. Don't our bells do it? HBU? That's it. Yeah. That's what he's trying to mimic in the words. Peace and goodwill, goodwill and peace, peace and goodwill to all mankind. They call that, what is it, Oxford chimes or something? The original one that did it was either in Oxford or Cambridge. I can't remember which. No, maybe it's Big Ben. Was the original one that did those chimes. But anyway, he's feeling, he senses the beauty of the December night, but he's feeling cut off again. This year I slept and woke with pain. Poor Sophia, you're feeling that way right now. This week, I can identify with that through the really hard times, right? And again, to me, all of grief is just summed up in that one line. This year I slept and woke with pain. Almost like you don't even remember the year. It's just, again, this is such a human poem. I almost wish no more to wake, and that my hold on life would break before I heard those bells again. And sometimes when you're grieving, it's like, if I can only make it to this, like if I can only make it to the next week, I'll do fine, right? Or if I can only make it through the person's birthday or something. And he even celebrates the birthdays of Tennyson, of Hallam after he dies. It's that kind of thing. When you're grieving, you make yourself little goals. Not, can I make it to the end of graduate? Can I make it to next week? Can I make it to the end of the month? That's how you do it. One foot in front of another. And then he finds a little bit of consolation at the end of this section, 28. But they, the bells, but they my troubled spirit rule, for they controlled me when a boy. They bring me sorrow touched with joy, the merry, merry bells of Yule. So he finds consolation at the end of number 28, but what kind of a consolation is it? Who finds consolation? Good. Good, it's looking back to childhood. And who finds consolation by looking back nostalgically to their childhood? Romantics, okay? So number 27 is kind of Victorian in its assertion of, I'd rather take the pain and move forward and live, but I'm not quite ready for that. So number 28 is a little quieter, and it ends again with a more romantic resolution. I'll dwell on, the nostalgia of Wordsworth. Let's look back, recollection of Wordsworth to those recollections of early childhood. All right, now let's jump all the way ahead to page 191, and that's number 54. I wish we could do every one of these poems because they're all good. But at the very heart of the poem is number 54, 55, and 56. We're going to look at that now. This is sort of the heart of the poem, and it's he mentions it earlier, but this is the first time that he is now going to wrestle with the new science. And even though, as I said, it would be another 15 years before Darwin would publish On the Origin of Species, already the new science was moving in that direction. And what really shocked people, even before the full idea of natural selection, was the idea that our Earth is not 6,000 years, or 60,000, or 600,000, or 6 million, but billions, right? And this is still, people struggle with this, and Christians can debate about this, right? I myself do not think man is very long, but I'm okay with maybe the Earth is very, very old. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, boom, right? But people struggle with that. Suddenly, when the time frame stretches out like that, and it's a time frame of endless death, even before you get the word natural selection, he's going to talk about it in these 3 poems already, because he's already seeing it, how nature can be very cruel. And nature doesn't seem to care about the individual. Right? And we'll look at all these examples here. But before I start, I want to give you a little bit of consolation here. And I speak about this a lot in my speeches, that, okay, whether or not the earth is 6,000 years old, or 6 million years old, or 4 billion, as they say now, right? I want you to understand that, okay, God begins his work with creation, okay? But when does the real work of God in human history, the work that's going to lead up to Christ, when does it really begin? With what important person? I mean, you got Noah and the flood, you got the Tower of Babel, but God's real direct working in human history begins with what person? Abraham, okay? And do you know about when Abraham lived? Okay, he lived about 2000 BC. So Abraham is 4,000 years ago, right? So I just want to explain to you that however you want to read Genesis, don't feel insignificant, because God's very direct working in human history through the Jewish people to Christ to today is only 4,000 years long. Now, if you live to the age of 80, which is not unbelievable these days, if you live to the age of 80, your lifespan has made up what percentage of those 4,000 years? This is cruel to do this to English people. That's good. It actually comes out to 2%, which is a pretty significant number. Right? Pretty significant. And even if you died at the age of 40, that would be 1%. Right? So I just want to say, because it's very important, because a lot of people struggle with this. Well, what if the world's 4 billion? It doesn't make a difference. Okay? What God is doing, that means you're very much a part. Your lifespan might make up a full 2%. Stuart Morris makes up 2.5%. Our founding father, he's 101 years old now. Your life can make up a significant portion, and you're part of that story. Okay? But these people, the Victorians, were the first ones to deal with this idea of, stretching on and on and on, but that doesn't necessarily make you insignificant. Just because the earth is a small dot in space, that doesn't mean it's insignificant. Right? But anyway, going to keep that in mind. So he's going to begin, like I said, it builds over these 3 sections, but starting with 54, he says, "Oh, yet we trust," which we want to believe, "that somehow good will be the final goal of ill, to pangs of nature, sins of will, defects of doubt, and taints of blood, that nothing walks with aimless feet, that not one life shall be destroyed, or cast as rubbish to the void, when God hath made the pile complete, that not a worm is cloven in vain, that not a moth with vain desire is shriveled in a fruitless fire, or but subserves another's gain." Okay, what has he wanted to believe is the nature of our world? That nothing that happens in our world is what? Is meaningless, okay? There's meaning even in the fall of a sparrow. That's a phrase that Hamlet says, but it goes back to the Bible, right? That God has counted all the hairs in our head, which is not hard in my case, but for some of you, that's a little more work for God, right? Two birds are sold for a penny, but not one falls without your Father knowing it. Right? That's what he wanted to believe. Did you ever see anybody? Used to be that all the secretaries would have a little statue that said, "I know I'm special because God don't make no junk." You ever heard that phrase? Thank you. God don't make no junk. Right? That's what I used to believe, that there's purpose in everything. I trusted that nothing was in vain, that everything had purpose. But then look at the last two. Behold, we know not anything. I can but trust that good shall fall, at last far off, at last to all, and every winter change to spring. So runs my dream, but what am I? An infant crying in the night, an infant crying for the light, and with no language but a cry. Again, it's like that trust is going farther and farther away. I can't reach it, okay? That goal, and it's receding on the horizon. And he tries to believe that every winter will give way to spring. In other words, death will give way to new life, like the seasonal cycle, that it won't just stagnate in winter forever. Winter is coming. That was the Game of Thrones. Winter is coming. That's what I want, but what am I? He's just an infant crying in the night, right? And with no language but a cry. And what is that cry? This poem. Okay? So lots of ways he thinks about this poem. He feels lost and alone in the dark, crying out with no one to hear him. We all feel that way. Except maybe Claire? Claire ever feel that way? Oh, she does too? Okay. Absolutely. Says, I want to give up. Right? But it continues on, and literally, number 55, right afterwards. The wish, our wish, that of the living whole no life may fail beyond the grave. In other words, our belief that we're immortal, the soul will live on, right? Derives it not from what we have, the likest God within the soul? So what is the origin of our belief that we will live on? At least immortality of the soul, if not resurrection of the body. Where does that come from? It comes from the breath of God within us. It's the spark of God within us that gives us that faith. And then he says, are God and nature then at strife? In other words, is nature telling us one thing and God inside of us, the Holy Spirit, telling us another? Right? Are God and nature then at strife, that nature lends such evil dreams? So careful of the type she seems, so careless of the single life. So it seems like nature only cares about the species, the group, and doesn't care about the individual. That's what it seems like. And certainly in nature, that's the only thing that's important. Right? That I, considering everywhere her secret meaning in her deeds, and finding that of 50 seeds she often brings but one to bear. Now, this is what Darwin will call natural selection, and most people just call survival of the fittest. Doesn't quite have that name yet, but that's what he's talking about. People already saw where this was going. And by the way, you know what people started off the whole evolution thing? Were not the biologists, but the geologists, who started looking at the rocks and said they're eons old, right? By the way, back in Darwin's day, they thought that we were multiple billions of years old. Now, the limit's been set at about 4.5 billion with the Big Bang. So now, that even if you believe that the Earth is 4 billion, that's nowhere near enough time for Darwinian evolution. Nowhere near enough time. And when I was your age, all the evolutionists were saying, man is millions and millions of years old. Now, if you actually read what they say, we're not much older than 30 or 40 or 50,000. I'm sorry, that's not enough time. It's ridiculous. And in fact, nobody wants to admit it, but the Christians who said 6,000 is a whole lot closer to 100,000 than 100,000 is to untold millions, which is what they said. That was in all the books when I was your age, even up to 20 years ago. So it's kind of funny. But again, this is scary. Does the individual mean nothing? As long as the group gets by, right? That's what happened in a lot of radical revolutions. They said the individual doesn't matter. As long as we build the perfect state, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. You've heard it. That was kind of the Marxist revolutionaries, right? So as he contemplates this, I falter where I firmly... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish it. The geologists... Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with this word, but before the 19th century, the reigning idea of geology was called catastrophism. That the world is shaped the way it is because of the flood and things like that. Right? That's the traditional view. The modern view from the 19th century that led to Darwinism is called uniformitarianism. And that means that everything you see is the product of slow, gradual change and erosion. Good, at the same rate, very good. They extrapolate backwards is what they do, right? And that's the view. So in other words, the Grand Canyon was not created by Noah's flood. It was created by millions of years of slow, gradual thing. Even though you might know this if you kind of study this stuff, does anybody know what Mount St. Helens is? That was before you were born. Okay, you remember, it was a big, huge eruption of a volcano in Washington State, or it was Washington State. And I saw pictures that after that explosion, it formed almost overnight a small version of the Grand Canyon. I mean, these things can do this. And in fact, even if you go, this is great, even if you go to our secular museum, Houston's, they no longer tell you that. Does anybody know what the petrified forest is? It's those. They're now saying no. The petrified forest was caused by something like a flood. It happened quickly. It wasn't slow. It's the wood that falls under and literally gets petrified like it's stone. Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
When I know about creationist science, it comes in like a little program that we listen to when we were kids. So it's not like I study it from textbooks or something.
Right.
Yeah, but like a lot of it was built upon that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just much more likely that fossils and things were formed by sudden catastrophes.
Right, sudden quick.
Them out rather than animal carcasses staying there and for some reason not getting decomposed.
Right.
Normally would or not getting disturbed or moved or anything.
So that's what I'm saying. Some of the new science, they don't want to admit it, but is moving away from that back to this idea of a catastrophe that's doing it. Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting. Don't get this idea that just because a consensus of scientists says it. I mean, this is political as anything else. Yeah. It's called the paradigm shift. Right?
I was just reading about it in honors college. We were reading Plato talking about the origin of diseases. He's like, yes, if you have excess blood.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Oh, the bleed because they bled. Yeah. Yeah, because you're right.
That's not science. That's just philosophy.
And that's what they throughout the Middle Ages. That's why even past the Middle Ages, all the way up to the Enlightenment. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, there we go. See, it's really fascinating. I mean, and there's a famous book by Thomas Kuhn about paradigm shifts that talks about that. I think you'll read that your last year. It's called Structures of Scientific Revolutions. It's a pretty cool book. Wow. So he thinks about this and he says, I falter where I firmly trod, and falling with my weight of cares upon the great world's altar stairs that slope through darkness up to God. So he falls down upon it, right? And, okay, now, in the Bible, is there an image of altar stairs or a staircase in the Bible? Right. Jacob's ladder, right? And Jacob's ladder led up to heaven, right? And what was on the ladder? Good. Angels ascending and descending. The ladder that goes up into light. This is Jacob's ladder, but what does it go up to? Look what it says. Up to God, but how's it described? It says, I'm sorry, upon that slope through darkness up to God. So it's reaching up to God, but you can't see anything. It's not like Jacob's ladder where you can see the angels ascending and descending. It's like a dark Jacob's ladder that, like, and in total darkness, space has no meaning. Have any of you ever been in a cave to experience total darkness?
I have not been to cave, but I've been in, we have a video room in our current house.
Oh.
I've slept in there before, and if you close the door and when the lights are out, there's no windows, the walls are super dark, there's nothing to reflect. There's like maybe one green beam from like the smoke alarm or whatever. But that's it. It's completely dark and you can't see a thing.
Yeah. You put your hand in front of your eyes. Sometimes when you go into caves, it's like that too. You have total darkness. It's like, and again, and time and space are meaningless. It could be a mile or 100 miles or 1,000,000 miles. And so he's feeling cut. I fall down upon the great world's altar stairs. What does that remind you of? Dr. Bolston's favorite line from Shelley? I fall upon thorns of life, I bleed. It's a little touch of that, okay? Falling down over there, right, with my weight of cares. And then I stretch lame hands, as in weak hands. The motif is returned. I stretch lame hands of fate and grope and gather dust and chaff and call to what I feel is Lord of all. and faintly trust the larger hope. So he's stretching, but it keeps receding. The hands are now weak as they reach up, and there's no other hand reaching down to get his. Again, it's a low part. All he can trust in is a very, very faint hope, far, far off in the distance. Now, number 56 picks up literally on 55, because 55 said, so careless of the type she is nature. So careless of the type she seems, so careful of the type she seems, so careless of the single life. So he's saying, nature doesn't care about the individual, only cares about the species. But it's worse than that. So careful of the type, is that what I said? But no! From scarped cliffs and quarried stone, she cries, nature cries, 1,000 types are gone. I care for nothing. All shall go. Does nature even care for species? What has happened to some species? They've gone extinct, like the dinosaurs or the dodo bird or whatever, right? These are species that have... So it's worse than we even thought. Nature doesn't even care about the species. Let it all go. And a lot of species have gone extinct, actually, over the years. Yeah, like I said, all those dinosaurs and stuff, and the bones. Look at the bones! That's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Anyway, and this is still nature speaking, thou madest thine appeal to me. I bring to life, I bring to death. The spirit does but mean the breath. I know no more. This is very dark. So what does nature mean? The spirit is only a breath. So when you die, then it's gone, right? There's no soul, right? I remember reading some transcript from some heresy trials, and there were people in the villagers, and one person said, I know there's no life after death because I watched as my wife died and the breath passed out and it was gone. It's like such a concrete way of thinking about it. Yeah? But here, that's what it seems like. And then in he shall man, and now Tennyson speaking. Is it possible? Shall man her last work, right? We're supposed to be the crown of creation. Right? We're supposed to be the last. And by the way, no evolutionist has ever been able to answer me, why have there been no new species since man that I know of? How did nature know to stop? Right? That suggests purpose. It's got to be going somewhere. Why are there no more species, as far as I know? You know? Yeah, we're declining too. Yeah, that's right. They're moving down. We are, and that's why. Oh, that's true. Oh, I didn't even think about that. You're right. That is true. Yeah, and I don't know if you know this now, but people are saying that they found what they call mitochondrial Eve and genetic Adam, that they can actually point back to one person, and they want to make that person 200,000 years ago. But it's like if you look at the rate of genetic decay, it may be true that Adam and Eve are 6,000 years ago. Because you're right, it has decayed. And if they want to be true uniformitarians, if the same decay has been going on, there you go. Gotcha. Right. Well, yeah, we are deteriorating. I think you're right. There is more and more need for that. And I mean, I don't know. This could also be environmental stuff, but in my parents' day, like ask your grandparents how many people had allergies and things like. There were some, but not like now. It's just crazy. Right. Yeah, it's real. Like I said, everyone was going to say it's psychosomatic, but I mean, you know that it's real when, like, I don't know, let's say you're lactose intolerant, and somebody gives you something to eat, and you don't know there's something in it, and then you get sick. I mean, obviously it's not in your mind, like if you didn't know. When I was in college, even these good Christians, oh, you're not really allergic to pets, anybody that's an animal lover. And I remember the group, we met in like somebody's apartment that wasn't there, and we were all sitting on the ground and talking our Bible study, and I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I finally say, I don't know why I'm getting so sick. Were there pets in here? And then the guy's like, oh, yeah, the previous owner had a pet. It's like, thank you, buddy, But that proved to him, I had no idea there had been anything like that. And I just got sick. So it's not just in your mind, but yeah, people are like that. They, if they're animal lovers or something like that. Well, whatever. We all have, we're all frail now. But yeah, and I guess we're getting frailer. I don't know. So, shall man her last work, who seems so fair, right? Such splendid purpose in his eyes, who rolled the psalm to wintry skies, who built him fanes of fruitless prayer, who trusted God was love indeed, and love creation's final law, though nature red in tooth and claw, with raven shrieked against his creed. Does that sound a little different than the romantic view of nature? The romantic view of nature is the homely nurse. Nature never did betray the heart that loved her, says Wordsworth. Here, red in tooth and claw. And this is something that is taught. I've heard my preacher quote this before. I mean, that phrase, nature red in tooth and claw. It's one of the darkest images of survival of the fittest. So, is it possible that we, who had such purpose, we did things, we built beautiful things, we built temples, we trusted in God, we trusted in all this beauty, who loved, who suffered countless ills, who battled for the true, the just, is it possible that we, that did all these things, be blown about the desert hills, or sealed within the iron hills? No more? Is it possible that we too shall what? Like the dinosaurs, shall we too become extinct, and all that will be left are? Yeah, dust. Fossils, dust. And that's such a scary. Or sealed within the iron hills. That's where they found the first fossils. Is that it? Is that all that will be left of us? Just fossils buried in the hills?
Which I think is so interesting in contrast with what he says about battle for the true, the just. Because those are abstract concepts. You dig up bones and stuff because you can't find evidence of their
good.
their invisible sort of. I'm sorry, I've been reading a lot of Plato.
Oh, good, yeah.
Like the forms.
That's right.
There's no in that bones and dust. They don't follow the philosophical or achievements of that kind. Like maybe they're more technological advancements or something will last, but their arts.
That's right. How can they do?
Tangible, beautiful creations.
Right. One of my favorite things, my favorite documentary. It's okay. No, go ahead. Just catch up when you can. Yeah. Don't watch it. Listen to it. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. You'll make it. Study together. They found the fracture there, but she'll make it. Yeah, she went. You're getting an MRI tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. Okay, good. Let us know. If you email me, I'll forward it on so everybody can be praying for you. Just tell me what's going on. But my favorite documentary in all the world is a documentary about Troy. It's called In Search of Troy by Michael Wood, this great British documentary guy. You watch it? It's great. Oh, okay, good. So I don't think that, but he's so good. But he goes through the whole thing, and then he ends, and I love it. He comes back, and he's at the ruins of Troy, and he says, "But what of Helen, the golden girl, the face that launched 1,000 ships?" And then his last line is, "Alas, in the archaeological record, love leaves no trace." That's what she said. It's just so beautiful. I mean, I don't usually cry at documentaries, but that gets me at the end, you know? What can you do? That's right. It was actually right. Yeah, all of it would have been lost. Right? That's wild. Are we moving into another dark age? It's possible. So he says, a monster, then a dream, a discord, dragons of the prime that tear each other in their slime, were mellow music matched with him. If this is true, better to be a dinosaur. At least the dinosaurs didn't flatter themselves that they were the crowning race and built things. They just, ate and died and whatnot. But it's more pathetic for us because we thought that we were so special, that we built things and art and religion, all that sort of stuff we did. And that's it? Better. Terrible. And so finally at the very last stanza he says, "O life as futile then as frail. If our faith in Christ is for this world alone, then..." Yeah. Good. We're to be pitied above all men. That's in 1 Corinthians 15, about the resurrection body, right? If Christ didn't, then they were in vain, right? Oh, life is futile, then is frail. Oh, for thy voice to soothe and bless. What hope of answer or redress behind the veil, behind the veil? Is there any hope there? Now, when he says, oh, for thy voice, you know what the thy is? It's actually not God here. It's who? His friend. Because if he heard from his friend, what would that mean? Good. That there is life and death, that it doesn't just end. So just one word from him would show me that, no, this is not the end. There's purpose. There's meaning. There's something beyond, right? Didn't we say before, white shores? He said? And beyond that, keep saying again, white shores and a far distant green, and a far green country under a swift sunrise. You got to get it right. So, okay. So we're waiting, and behind the veil, the ultimate veil is the veil of death, right? What do we see? And now jump all the way ahead to number 95. It's on page 205, and it's number 95. Most critics would say this is the climax of the poem. There's still more to come, and more. This is a poem that asks, it's like, again, people complain about the Return of the King, that the ending is too long, right? Ridiculous. And remember, too, that ending is not the ending of a 3-hour movie. It's the ending of a 9 or 10-hour movie, right? I mean, you need that. It is too short. I would love to have more. Yeah, even the book. Yeah, it's a full 100 pages after Mordor falls. Yeah, somebody's got to make a movie about the scouring of the Shire. Yeah, it does appear in the BBC radio play version. If you listen to that, it does have the scouring of the Shire. Yes, that one. Yeah, you got to listen to it. It does get rid of Tom Bombadil, but you would have done that too, I think.
I remember when my sister got that CD for Christmas, and we would listen to it eagerly. We were like,
Oh,
our favorite quote.
oh no!
Oh, I didn't finish listening to it. And then my brother's like, my brother Sam right after me. He's not a very big reader. He's a resident reader, but he doesn't love to read a lot. He really enjoys the CDs.
The CDs, yeah, they're great.
That's the big kind of like a good thing for him.
That's good. He's an auditory learner. Right?
He prefers like humble books and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
He's
See,
also like a big artist, so he just like
oh, isn't that cool? You get him over here. Make graphic novels.
I don't know if he's got that part yet, but he's really good. I mean, also he's more musically talented than I am.
See, I'm becoming an Aggie.
I tried to learn something the other day with my mask off.
Oh,
And then my next thought was, I should take my mask off and blow.
that's the one thing you're not allowed to do, right? Oh my gosh. They caught up, but there were a few HB students that were walking around with the mask that has the little portholes on it, which of course defeats the whole purpose of the mask. Oh yeah, that is. Sometimes it falls down. Yeah. So we move to 95, and again, there will need. The reason I mentioned Lord of the Rings is this is a huge poem that needs lots of resolutions, but this is the climax, and it's the moment where the cry at the end of number 56, "Oh, for thy voice," is going to come, and it starts very, very slow. This is really one of the great mystical poems, just like, oddly enough, Tintern Abbey is. Like Tintern Abbey, it's a mystical poem, but in a very quiet way. They're all together at the house. By night we lingered on the lawn, for underfoot the herb was dry, and genial warmth, and o'er the sky the silvery haze of summer drawn, and calm that let the tapers burn unwavering. You know what tapers are? It's candles, right? It is such a still night that even the candles are not what? Flickering. Good, right? I mean, that's really any tiniest wind would make it flicker, right? That's it. Yeah, no breeze at all. Just absolutely still and quiet. Right? And calm that let the tapers burn unwavering. Not a cricket chirred. The brook alone far off was heard. And on the board the fluttering urn. That's the flame that can make their tea. Right? Kind of stuff. Although they're probably making tea, unless they're making wassail or whatever. But. And on the board the fluttering urn, and bats went round in fragrant skies, and wheeled or lit the filmy shapes that haunt the dusk with ermine capes and woolly breasts and beaded eyes. Man, it's so still that the bats seem decorative, right? That's scary. It's just such a completely quiet, still evening. while now we sang old songs that pealed from knoll to knoll, where couched at ease the white kine glimmered, and the trees laid their dark arms about the field. Kine is a poetic way of saying the cattle on the hills. Again, everything's at peace. They're singing old songs. There's a sense of nostalgia here. I don't know if they're singing Disney songs, but they're you know. Which one? Old Lang Syne. Yeah, I love that. That's true. Old Lang Syne. What does this mean? Anyway, that the all together, it's like all nature is in harmony. Everything's beautiful. Almost a romantic, pantheistic touch. But then after they finish, it says, "But when those others, one by one, withdrew themselves from me and night, and in the house light after light went out, and I was all alone." This is the time for a mystical moment, right? You're all together, you're singing, and then one by one the people leave, one by one, "Oh, I'm tired, I'm going to bed." One by one, the lights in the house go out, one by one. Not the electric lights yet, but one by one, the lights go out in the house, and now he's all alone, and he's ready. In this silence, a hunger seized my heart. I read of that glad year. Now he's talking about his friendship with Hallam, which lasted longer than a year, but poetically, I'm going to look back together at my whole friendship with Hallam. Of that glad year which once had been, in those fallen leaves which keep their green, the noble letters of the dead. So he's reminiscing his friendship with Hallam as if he's reading it in a book. Like this green book. And as he reads and as he relives it, and strangely on the silence broke the silent speaking words, and strange was love's dumb cry defying change to test his worth, and strangely spoke the faith, the vigor, bold to dwell on doubts that drive the coward back, and keen through wordy snares to track suggestion to her inmost cell. Suddenly, in the silence, in the speaking, a stronger and firmer kind of love and faith emerges. Right? Love's dumb cry. Now, that doesn't mean love's stupid cry. It means what? Silent cry. Love's silent cry, defying change to test his worth. Because generally speaking, what does time do to love? It kills it, right? It changes or kills it. But we know love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. You know that? You got it. Love me not to the marriage of truth. You love it? Oh, and isn't it Sense and Sensibility where somebody quotes that? The Emma Thompson version? I haven't seen that. That's so good. Sense and Sensibility. But what? That's one of the best Jane Austen movies. It's Emma Thompson. She's a little bit technically too old to play her role, but she's really good. And she wrote the screenplay, too. And won an Oscar, I think, for the screenplay. It's very good. Sense and Sensibility. With Emma Thompson and a young... Alan Rickman. Yes, Alan Rickman. And he's very good at it, too. Yeah. He's cool. Again, suddenly, what that means is love's not time. So love doesn't serve time, right? Time can steal our beauty, our youth, everything, right? But love alters not with time's brief hours and weeks, but bears it out to the edge of doom, right? Because there will come a time when what will happen to death, even? It will die. Yeah, good. Death, thou shalt die. Very good. What is the name of that? Good, Death Without Problem. John Donne. I've got to send it to you. My daughter set that sonnet to music and sang it in 4-part or 8-part, as a, what do they call that? Like a art song. There's a fancy word, a motet. It's a fancy word for it, a motet. And they performed it at the Honors College banquet many years ago. To send it. I just love that song. So here, again, death will die, but love will survive the end of the world. Right? So love will outlive death, is what Shakespeare's saying. And he's saying it here. Suddenly, I've also got a new kind of faith. A faith that is not afraid of doubt. A faith that, not a blind faith, but a faith that is willing to be tested, to move forward, right? On doubt, I'm not suddenly I've got a faith that is strong even to look on doubt, that cowards would run away, unable to do. I'm going to look on that directly, right? And keen through wordy snares to track suggestion to our inmost self. I'm going to go right down to the core and wrestle with things. I'm going to be unafraid.
Okay, I'm not sure. But there's different types of faith. There's kind of, if you think
Good.
of it as in like almost like the term of like your first relationship with Christ, right?
Right. That good. That's the initial faith.
Like very good, like almost simple, blind faith. You don't think about stuff. You just yes, I believe
Good.
it's true, and then doubt starts to set in.
Good.
Wait, is it? And then eventually, a deeper faith, a more mature faith emerges where you're not blind. You're aware of
Good.
these doubts and things, but you have to counter them. So it's like the part, I don't remember which gospel it is, but the man who comes to Jesus with his son.
Oh.
I believe, help my unbelief.
Help my unbelief. Good. I believe. Help my unbelief, which is wonderful. That's a famous thing, right? And what you just said, I'm going to be speaking to a group on Saturday about this, because I'll be talking about Mere Christianity, Book 3, about the Christian life, and Lewis says, faith. And faith is, you're right, it is the initial moment of faith, but it's also a way you live your life. It's kind of seen, radically. We live by faith. Have you ever met Christians who drive by faith? Oh, man. Okay. Please, if you're going to put a fish on your bumper sticker, right, don't cut people off. Yeah. Have you ever been cut off and then you see the fish as it goes along? It's like, please, Jesus is Lord, as they cut you off. Drive like a Christian if you're going to put that down there. Anyway. You'll forget, that's right. You're forgiven. I like that. So as he goes, unafraid to go right to the nitty gritty, and if you strengthen your faith and your love together, it's going to give you hope, right? If they go together, those three. He said, so word by word and line by line, deeper he's going. The dead man touched me from the past, and all at once it seemed at last the living soul was flashed on mine, and mine in this was wound and whirled about imperial heights of thought, and came on that which is, and caught the deep pulsations of the world. Aeonian music measuring out the steps of time, the shocks of chance, the blows of death. It's a mystical moment. It's like he's joined together with the soul of Hallam and whirled through, getting that higher perspective that we lack, something beyond the shocks of chance, the steps of time, the blows of death. Touches on that deep, like I said, the peace that surpasses all understanding, that deeper kind of shalom. Just for a moment, the two come together. But then what happens is what happened to almost any mystic thing. At length, my trance was cancelled, stricken through with doubt. Doubt jumps back in for a moment and pulls him back down. But for a moment, he reached up, almost like in the beginning of the Nightingale, where for a moment the song of the Nightingale took him up, but he couldn't stay there and crashed back down again. Vague words, but how hard to frame in matter molded forms of speech, or even for intellect to reach through memory that which I became. In Dante's Paradiso, he tries to describe the beauty of what he sees, but it surpasses human language. And Dante's got a famous phrase in the opening canto of Paradiso. He says, how speak transhuman change to human sense. And I think Tennyson definitely has that. How do you speak about metaphysical things in matter-molded forms of speech? It's very similar, actually, what you were saying earlier, Abigail, about how can you see a trace of love or justice or beauty in just an object? Right? It might tell you about technology, but how's it going to tell you? You can't press it into something that is merely physical. That's a good point. Intangible things are intangible, right? Oh my gosh! And so I can't. And the other thing that Dante says is, what I saw when he looked upon God, it went deeper in me than memory. So deep I can't even scoop it out of my memory. This experience is so deep, he doesn't even know how to put it in words. He's tried, and he doesn't say, or even for intellect to reach through memory, that which I saw, that which I became. For a moment. till now the doubtful dusk revealed the knolls once more were couched at ease, the white kine glimmered, and the trees laid their dark arms about the field. Can you tell me about that stanza? What? The white kine glimmered, and the trees laid their dark arms about the field? Did you hear that? Does that sound familiar? Okay. Oh, hold it, but even more, look at the beginning of this section. You see stanza, is it 5? Stanza 4? Stanza 4? It's almost an exact repetition of stanza 4. See that? Line 15 and 16? See? We've come full circle, but, as I've showed you so many times, we've come full circle, but then we're going to go beyond it. Because luckily the section doesn't end there with a simple return. Then look what happens, this unbelievable image. Now that he's back, he says, and sucked from out the distant gloom, a breeze began to tremble o'er the large leaves of the sycamore, and fluctuate all the still perfume, and gathering freshly overhead, rock the full foliage ends, and swung the heavy folded rose, and flung the lilies to and fro, and said, the dawn, and died away. And east and west, without a breath, mix their dim lights like life and death, to broaden into boundless day. Maybe the most beautiful verse I've ever read. And did we hear a line of poetry that sounded like that? To broaden into boundless day? With those B sounds? And ghastly through the drizzling rain, and the blank on the bald street broke the blank day. Remember? The last one we did last time, number 7? The bald street broke the blank day. Right? It's the same B sounds, but whereas that sounded like the nails in the coffin, to broaden into boundless day, it just goes on forever. That's what I mean when Tennyson is in complete control of the English language, modulation of it. Right. Yeah, oh, right, the 3 alliterative. That's true, this time it isn't, it's just the 2 B's. Huh. Oh, they'll keep going on, that's a good point. I like it. Oh, right, it's the West, right, yeah. That's true, yeah. Yeah. They join together, good. That's good, because you're right. Yeah, the East is the place, the sunrise is in the East. The West is the place of dying, and it is strange into the West. But you're right. And at this moment, this mystical moment, and it's basically dawn, at that moment, what touches together? What are the 2 things that meet? You just said East and West meet, right? The light and the dark, life and death, and what else can we add to that? What else is meeting? Time and eternity, and also Tennyson and Helen. You see how it's just that frozen moment where they come together and sort of kiss and then off to the horizon. Just a beautiful image. Okay, they've come together and they part. And that's it. Now you know, he knows it's real. Right? He's felt the touch of that. And you go back to it. That's why keep a prayer journal, so you can remind yourself of the time when it was real. And you can go back and know it's real again, but sometimes we forget about that. Man, it's an amazing moment. Okay, now, but this poem, like I said, is an epic. So we need more than one resolution. Right? Now we're sort of resolving the fear about the immortality of the soul and life after death. But we've got other things to resolve, man.
Because often in your in terms of a book, there's simple stories where like someone's having some sort of midlife crisis,
right.
Like an emotional crisis that has to be solved, a complete story. And sometimes it's on the other side, it's like an action movie, and all you have to do is defeat the bad guy.
Oh, right.
But really good stories, we have both.
Good.
You have to reach your own, solve your
Good.
Yes. And so you can see that Lord of the Rings on them.
And you can, you're right, you can see where there's got to be multiple resolutions because there's something so big going on.
Tennyson has to reach kind of those emotional resolutions.
Good.
And then go on and fight the next.
Good, and that's good. And so he has found peace, but now the Victorian side has to. And so number 106 is page 211. Now he has to, he's restored his faith in life after death. Now he has to restore his faith in progress, that things are getting better and that we're not going to become another dinosaur sealed in the hills. Right? And this is the third New Year's after Hallam's death. So it's the third New Year's after the third Christmas. And this is such a famous poem. It's number 106 on page 211. Ring out, wild bells, to the wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out, wild bells, and let him die. Ring out the old, ring in the new, ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let him go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that here we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Ring in redress to all mankind. Ring out a slowly dying cause and ancient forms of party strife. Ring in the nobler modes of life with sweeter manners, purer laws. Ring out the want, the care, the sin, the faithless coldness of the times. Ring out my mournful rhymes, but ring the fuller minstrel in. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Ring out the thousand wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Ring in the valiant man and free, the larger heart, the kindlier hand. Ring out the darkness of the land. Ring in the Christ that is to be. Wow! Okay? Out with the old, in with the new. Now, do you know what that's a reference to? The 1,000 years of peace?
Right, that's in Revelation.
Good.
Some people think, like, I forget what the term
Good. You got it.
Some
Good.
people think it's a metaphor, some think it's a literal 1,000 years.
Good.
We'll come back and rule, and then we'll all have a new
Good. And we call, and what is, how do you say 1,000 in Latin? Millennium, right? And so this is the millennial. And you're right, there is premillennial, amillennial, and postmillennial. Okay? Yeah, I mean, that's strange. And the sort of most common one for evangelicals for the last 30 years, if you've ever heard of the Late Great Planet Earth or the Left Behind series, is that idea that, things will get really, really worse, right? And then Christ will return, and then he will set up his millennial kingdom, 1,000-year reign of peace, most say in Jerusalem, right? He will build that glorious kingdom, right? And then after that, briefly, Satan will come back, and then he'll destroy him, and then it'll be over, right? So we're moving to that millennial kingdom. Now, amillennial means no millennium, which means the church age is the millennium. We're living in the millennium now. But post-millennialism, premillennialism means Christ will return before the millennium. Post-millennial means that we, including the church, but we will build the millennium. We will create that post-millennial utopia, and after that, Christ will come back. Okay? And that is a much more optimistic view of things. It's very liberal, but oddly enough, there were one group of Americans that were very, very conservative and were trying to build a post-millennial kingdom in America. You know who they're called? Yeah, the Amish, but even before that, the Puritans. But the Amish too, in a way. But the Puritans, a lot of them were, they were post-millennial, not because some people are post-millennial the liberal way because they believe man is by nature good and we can build a utopia. That's of course not what the Puritans believe, but they believe that Christ was going to use them to build this kingdom, right? And so here, this is the post-millennial kingdom, that things are getting better and better and we can build utopia. Now, traditionally, Christians, we can't do that because of sin and disobedience and pride. Good, basic needs, right? We're depravity. Yeah, we can't do it. But in the Victorian age, it started before this, it starts with Rousseau, is the idea that the problem with man is not sin and disobedience. The problem with man is ignorance and poverty. And so if you can eliminate ignorance and poverty, you can build that millennium, right? And that's why at the A Christmas Carol, when he meets the ghost of Christmas Present, who is basically Father Christmas, when their interview is coming to an end, Scrooge notices that the cloak of the spirit is rustling. And he says, "What is it that rustles under your cloak, spirit?" And he lifts up his cloak to reveal what? Well, you remember. Do you know your Christmas Carol? Oh, you seen movies? Two little urchins, a boy and a girl, nasty and dirty. And Scrooge says, "Are those your children, spirit?" "They are man's. The boy is ignorance. The girl is want," which is another word that means lack or poverty. So the boy is ignorance, the girl is poverty. Beware these children, Scrooge, but beware most of all the boy, ignorance. Right? And so that's why, even though Christians are the ones that built the university and stuff, in the modern period, it was people like John Dewey who wanted to use education to socialize and build a perfect world. Okay? So there's like a kind of more liberal and more conservative way of doing that. But this idea, and of course, again, I think every Christian should try to eliminate ignorance and poverty, but I don't think it's going to bring in the millennium, because we're fallen and depraved. But we try. We continue on. But here is that hope that we can get rid of all the strife. We can build a world where there's not even any rich and poor, right? There's no, evil capitalists and hungry workers and stuff like that. Everything is, that's not exactly the saying that he's being a socialist in our sense of the word, but he's saying that we're going to bring in the new age, that we can believe in progress. Everything is getting bigger and bigger. This is the moment when Tennyson, the former romantic, fully merges himself with what might be called the Victorian spirit of progress. Because whereas romantics look backwards to Eden and are nostalgic, Victorians look forward either to the New Jerusalem or the one that we're going to build, right? Which is a sort of secularized version of the New Jerusalem. We are going to build, we're not going back to Eden, we're going forward to the post-millennial kingdom, and we're going to build it, and we need to be part, and that's why they want to be part of the city, right? Because the city is the beehive where everything is working and building, and and we're going to build a brave new world, right? And again, we have utopianism, that famous song by John Lennon called Imagine. Yeah. But of course, if you really read the words, it's juvenile, because there's not going to be any religion, there's just going to be brotherhood. Really? Oh, that'd be nice. Okay, but that doesn't work. You need something to base it on, right? But Imagine would be a modern example of this, but a little more immature. This is very mature. It's a beautiful song, though, I must say. But we're moving forward to what Tennyson will call later the crowning race. We're getting better and better. We're improving and improving and improving. And let me at least say a little bit about number 118 on page 214. Page 214, number 118. All right, we've resolved our doubts about progress and our doubts about immortality. What about our doubts about science? What about 54, 55, and 56, in which it was a horrible thing? Well, in number 118, he looks again, I'm going to call it Darwinism, though that's an anachronism. We're going to look again at what we see in nature. And let's see. He says, "Contemplate all this work of time, the giant laboring in his youth, nor dream of human love and truth as dying nature's earth and life." Let's look at it again. See, he's had his face in it. Let's step back and look at the overall picture that we see in, quote, evolution. Maybe it'll say something different. Don't believe that we're meaningless, that we're just nature's earth and life. In other words, that man is no more than manure and fertilizer. What he's saying, right? Wait, let's look back. Instead, but trust that those we call the dead are breathers of an ampler day. A beautiful phrase. Fuller, richer. Abundant. Very good. Abundant. Recommend. Very good. It's abundant, right? Ampler. Ampler day. I like that. Forever nobler ends. Okay, they say, now the they is really, as your notes have, it's really the geologists, and actually some of this started with the astronomers. The new astronomy also said everything is eons old and dies and decays, all of that. That's the new science. And they say, the solid earth whereon we tread in tracts of fluid heat began, and grew seeming random forms, the seeming prey of cyclic storms, till at the last arose the man. So they said everything started as molten and it slowly cooled and all this sort of stuff, until at the end man arose, right? And notice the word seeming. The seeming random forms and the seeming prey of sickly shore. What do you mean by that? It may seem to be
this way, but it's actually not.
good, right? So it seems random, unmeaning, but there's something going on. There's something moving forward, right? Who throve and branched from clime to clime, the herald of a higher race, and of himself in higher place, if so he type this work of time within himself from more to more. What he's saying is, when you start looking at it, all you see are arrows going forward. And what he's claiming is, in the evolution of man from ape man to the crowning race, we see repeated the movement from amoeba to man. So he just keeps seeing everything is about progress and forward, getting better and better, improving and improving. He says, for time to time, or crowned with attributes of woe, like glories move his course, and show that life is not as idle ore, but iron dug from central gloom, and heated hot with burning fears, and dipped in baths of hissing tears, and battered with the shocks of doom to shape and use. Okay, one of the most common metaphors that God uses for how does God use suffering? God uses suffering to strengthen our faith, like what is strengthening what? It's the metaphor here. You very rarely find pure this in nature. It has to be refined. Metal, good. I mean, I don't think of gold, but metal just in general, right? Right? You don't. So, how do you get pure gold? Good. How do you refine it? Good. You literally put it in the fire, and it gets so hot, and when it gets super hot, what falls out? The impurities. They call that the dross, and what you're left with is pure gold. That's what he's talking. We're not as idle ore. That God uses, and nature both, use suffering to perfect and purify us, right? So we're moving up. Arise and fly, the reeling fawn, the sensual feast. Move upward, working out the beast, and let the ape and tiger die. We are evolving past our bestial nature, the ape and the tiger, whether that's ignorance and wrath or whatever it represents. It's the bestial side of us. Things are getting better. We're moving upward, but I was too close to see it. Now that I've stepped back, I now see that everything is moving upward. And so the same idea of evolution that crushed him, now, wait a minute, if we look at it again, maybe what it really says is everything's getting better. Now, Tennyson would not have been a six-day evolutionist, a creationist, but he also wouldn't have been a Darwinian. He probably would have been somewhere between a theistic evolutionist and maybe intelligent design or something. Yeah, that idea. He would have tried to reconcile evolution, science, but it is not pure evolution. It is directed, and it's a little more than theistic because it is directed by God. But quickly, here's the last thing, and what's so cool about this. Tell me something about the end of stanza 2, 4, and 6. The very end of 2, 4, and 6. Do you see how there's no punctuation? They say the solid earth whereon we tread, in track, that he does it again. He types this work of time within himself, the shocks of doom to shape and use. Isn't that wonderful? Do you see what's happening in the poem? It's like the stanzas are going up, up. They keep moving up because it's strange enough to enjam lines, but to enjam whole stanzas, right? Stanzas are supposed to have a strong ending at the end. And so the very form of the poem using here, we feel that movement and seething forward as we go up and up and up again. You guys did a good job. Next class, there's a couple more poems, and then we'll move on. So keep reading, and we'll see if everybody turned in their paper. Okay, I went a few minutes late, but.